I'm happy to see everyone here. We're going to be talking about the Bright Awards, and equally as important, we're going to talk about the design process. Again, just a quick talk about Bright Awards. So what is Bright Awards? It's a design and creative technology competition for years 10, 11, and 12 high school students in all of Australia. So we're doing this in partnership with Adobe. And the reason why we're doing this is a few things really. We're recognizing up and coming designers. So students like yourselves. We're also looking to support design and creative technologies and practices in high schools. And on top of that, we really want to highlight creative work. So there are 9 categories to enter. So for some of you who are interested in 3D design and animation, we have a category just for that. We have film and video, we have interior design, we have coding and robotics, we have game design, we have photography, fashion design, graphic design, UX and web design. So again, 9 categories. Now there's going to be specific information perhaps with regards to what is expected and the specs for each of those categories. And we did provide a link and a website for more information with regards to those specific categories. Now, what you can win if you do decide to join and become a finalist, you can earn yourself up to $1,000. And you get a complimentary Creative Cloud license from Adobe. And then on top of that, we offer a Pinnacle Award in Creativity and Innovation where you can earn up to $1,500 more. And then a 50% scholarship to study design and creative technology with us in Torrance, and also $5,000 for your school. So some really interesting prizes there if you do decide to join. So as I mentioned, another aspect of this workshop is to talk about the design thinking process. So how do you go about solving a creative problem or perhaps doing a creative project? So in Torrance University, we talk about design thinking. Now, you can, with regards to the steps involved of design thinking, oftentimes we start with the process of empathizing first and immersing yourself with a particular problem. Then you go about defining and creating ideas, visualizing those ideas. Then step 3 would be refining those ideas and then creating your prototypes. So just to put things in context, empathizing and immersing. So when you have a creative problem, you want to immerse yourself. So an example of this one is um, I have my class work on a short film, and the short film is a dystopian future in South America, for example. Now, to be able to answer or solve that creative challenge, you have to immerse yourself not only with South America, with not only with that particular genre, but also a lot of the visual aspects of that creative problem. So we have an example here where the students created mood boards. So we have students creating the mood boards, inspiration, gathering inspiration from different mediums, from the internet, and doing a lot of exploration from different sources. The next stage is to define and create some ideas out of that. So in the context of, I guess, storytelling, this might be in the form of a storyboard. So we have a student here creating storyboards and then really working together, coming up with a really interesting story for the team to develop. So this storyboard will take, a few weeks to do or several days to do. But once you have that idea refined, what happens is you get a story that everyone is happy to work on. Then you go through the process of refining. And in the context of, let's say, creating 3D models, this is where you play around with things like proportions, shapes, and perhaps the structures, and perhaps really refining what the 3D object will look like. And then lastly, you go through the process of creating your prototypes. So again, in the process of modeling, this might involve actually modeling the character, for example, and then working with textures, checking or playing around with what materials and what shapes and what I guess textures will be used for that character. Now, to really bring this all in context, we're joined by Alwyn, and Alwyn will demonstrate how this process works from a professional standpoint. So let me just pass you over to Alwyn
Cool.
to
Am I
talk
full
about that
screen?
process.
Am I full screen, Ivan, or is it
Yes,
just a thumbnail?
that's right. Your yeah, your full screen, but your screen hasn't been shared yet.
Okay, cool, awesome. So thank you everyone for jumping on. Yeah, I just wanted to go through that process, and thanks for breaking that down. And sometimes I'm just going to talk from my experience. Like when you're working on big films, and there's things to be done, and you can be really tempted to jump into the tools really quickly. Because when you look at some of the Adobe products, for example, if you're using Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever application it is, you can get sidetracked very easy by actually just jumping on the tools. So it's extremely important to go through these steps just so that for your own sanity, that you've got a really clear path of what you're trying to achieve with this. And I just wanted to touch on empathize a little bit there, Ivan, as well.
Yes.
So, for me, whenever I'm going into a project, I really want to be connected to it. So it's got to mean something to me, like emotionally. So if I'm going to be doing a character for the Hobbit movie, or I'm going to be working on Iron Man, whatever the concept is, I'm going to do some research about that, and I'm going to, maybe watch documentaries or understand animals and understand anatomy, and really just kind of get myself emotionally attached to this project. Because when you're emotionally attached, then you're passionate about it. And passion is the thing that will get you to the finish line. So it's really, really important to get connected early on. Spend time, like as you watch documentaries, do the research, and ask the questions. Is it for learning? Is it for fun? Is it to communicate a message? Whatever, there's got to be a motivation behind that. And when we're looking at define and creating further ideas, the key thing there is to really understand, okay, what are the problems? What am I trying to solve here? If you're, for example, the PDF that had as an example about Mars, right? So as an example, if somebody is going to be exploring the concept of traveling to Mars, what are the problems that humanity are going to face once they get there? So, and as you can imagine, there is going to be a plethora of problems. So then you need to then look at that list and then refine, right? So it comes back down to, so what's going to be one of the key problems that I want to focus on? And maybe it's shelter, maybe it's transportation, maybe it's whatever. So it's really refining that concept. So each stage you're refining. You start big, throw lots of ideas, and nothing is too big at that sort of like that initial stage. But then you'll get to a point where you need to go, quality over quantity, and then again that passion will drive where you want to go with the story. So it's super important to make sure you do all this before you even start doing sketches or start doing anything that is app related. And then, that prototyping, brainstorming, refining idea, I mean, that's the most exciting part, because that's really where you're starting to figure out what that story is. So today, what I want to do is kind of take that whole Mars project that is the example on that PDF, and just kind of show you exactly the road that I went down with it. So I'm going to share my screen now, and then we'll just have a quick look. So just let me know when you can see my screen. I'm going to go live, and I'm going to minimize that. Okay, cool. Ivan, can you see my screen okay?
Yes. So all good.
Excellent. So one of the first things that I'll do is I will go on the internet, and like I said, I'm going to be looking for ideas, concepts, and really just putting images up to really start thinking about, okay, where am I going to go? Okay, so initially I was, okay, cool, I'm going to think about transportation on Mars. And then I started looking into some of the concepts. And, when you look at some of the imagery that I was getting, it's a very solemn and lonely place, particularly if you're going to be going to a planet and there's no one else there and no civilization or anything. So this sense of loneliness and solidarity was really striking to me even early on as I was doing the research for, transportation. What would it look like to have some sort of Mars rover type thing on a desolate planet? So, these were some of the images that I was coming up with, and I liked, that it was giving me, these are real photos from, the Mars rover that I was just, then I started getting fascinated by this planet and doing more research, right? These are some concepts that were conceptual about humans in spacesuits and stuff like that, some early sort of concept ideas for transportation. Again, coming back to that, wow, this is a pretty barren place, and what the loneliness that you would face being on this planet, and the conditions that you're having to endure. So these are some of the early sort of images that I was getting. And then I started going into like, okay, what would the transportation side of things look like? And there were some really cool images that I found describing, the ultraviolet spectrometer and things like that, which, I've got no idea what they mean, but they sounded really cool. And I was like, well, these need to be sophisticated bits of machinery that are going to be able to move across the terrain really easily. I loved just some of the design work that's gone into some of these spacecrafts, digging for extracts within the soil itself. So this is kind of where I was starting to move with the transportation side of things.
Yes. Sorry,
Now
Alwyn.
yeah,
Yeah.
go for it, mate.
Oh, yeah. With regards to, finding sources like that, do you just rely on the internet, or do you use other sources as well?
Yeah, so mostly I'll rely on, you can do the more traditional, which are like libraries, and, internet is just a source of information, right? So you can quickly gather information like that.
Yes.
But for this concept, I wanted to do something and start using, some of the new AI technology out there. So there's things like, for those people that don't know, like Midjourney and DALL-E, these are programs where you can just write in text prompts and it will create images for you. So Adobe have one that's called Adobe Firefly, and it's as simple as writing in a command, or not a command line, but just some words, and it will generate images for you. And I'm going to show you exactly how that works, and then I'll come back and show you how what the images that I got for it. So to access Firefly, there's the Creative Cloud, your Adobe Creative Cloud desktop application here. You can see Adobe Firefly here, and I can launch that. It's just a web-based browser application. And if I jump across into the web now, and I'll bring it up here, you can see that I'm inside of Firefly, firefly.adobe.com. And this is just a bunch of images that people have created. And you can see the text prompts that they used to create that image, right? So you can see futuristic car inspired by mantis form
Nice.
fish. So if I click on this, you can see that you start getting some really crazy, cool
Yeah.
ideas, right?
That looks
So
really good.
looks
Amazing.
amazing,
Yeah,
right? And then
exactly.
from here, you can pick one and go, okay, create variations based off this variation, or you can refine your text command, or not command, but your text prompt down here. So I wanted to see what it would look like if I went, Mars rover, red planet, and just hit enter, and then it'll start going through. And you can see on the right hand side here, you've got different styles and types. So I can essentially go through and create, whether it's photorealistic or something more artistic. And you can see just from those 4 words, I'm able to create some really cool images. So if I just click on this one, for example, it's got some rover, it's just, it's got some machinery there, and I can go through the ones that it's created. Now, if I click out of that and I go, actually, you know what? I really like maybe this one here. Show me more. Show me more options for that. So I can click and create more options for it, or I can download it. So it's, or I can give it a thumbs up, and then it'll create more. If I wanted a completely different style, so I can go more photorealistic, then it'll go through and create images based off my selections here, which is really, really cool. So other areas that I will go to, and you can see now these are, looking more realistic
Mm.
than just that sort of cartoony style that we were looking at before. A lot more detail. The dirt, you can see that it's yeah, more details being added. Other places that I'll go to are places like ArtStation. I did a quick search for Mars rover here. ArtStation is a platform where a lot of industry professionals will post work, concept work, and you know, portfolios of work on there. So another great source of inspiration outside of sort of YouTube, outside of the internet, you can
Yes.
come to ArtStation, Behance, and even on the Rookies a website here. This website is only students' work that are on here, but you can come in here and do some searches for various projects that might again relate to sort of the topic that you're focused on.
Mm.
So a couple of places there, and then if I go back to my reference, and you can see here, what I've done here is I'm creating a mood board. So the whole idea, I'm not touching any applications, I'm just getting ideas down, so I'm refining. So I've got, okay, cool, some emotional response there, more of the technical here with the transportation side of things. And you can see here, here's some images that were created using Firefly, the application that I was just showing you there. If I zoom into these, you can see, you know, some machinery, bits and pieces. I'm really just trying to explore ideas here. You know, am I going for something that's more cartoony, futuristic, stylized? What is it that I'm going for? And you can see even I've pushed it even further and gone for that sort of cartoon, thick outline look here. And, you know, it's pretty far-fetched, some of this stuff, but this is, you know, this is the fun that you can have with it.
Yes.
So, sorry, Ivan, did you want to
I
ask?
know. No, I'm just amazed that this is for a 3D project, but if you have something like a UX design project or a film project, you go through almost the same type of immersion, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So you could be doing product design, you could be doing fashion design, or what. It doesn't matter what industry. I'm just focused on the sort of the 3D aspect of this, but the actual design process itself is exactly the same. You're absolutely bang on there, Ivan. And then from this, then I start thinking about, okay, you know, what is it that I need? So I'm going to be thinking about, I want to create this in a 3D world because I want to be able to do renders and I want to be able to create some nice images at the end of that. So there's a whole bunch of 3D programs out there. Today, I'm going to use some of the Adobe applications. They've got a section here which has got 3D modeling programs, as well as Substance Painter, which is like Photoshop for 3D. You've got Stager, which is your lighting and rendering, but you could be using Photoshop, you could be using Illustrator, you can use any sort of application you want. And, you know, if I was to go back to the reference mood board there, I've listed out some, and I'll just come across here. These are some of the modeling software, and you can see there is a lot, right? There's
Yes.
some that are web-based, super easy to use. And you know, there's no licensing involved. You can jump straight on and be able to create some 3D even within these web-based applications. So, you know, when we think about this contest, you know, the sky's the limit, really. Once you've got that design stage figured out and you've got your storyline figured out and you really know, okay, I need to create this piece and this piece, and, you know, whatever application that is, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's
Yes.
about that connection with it.
Yeah, I'm also looking at your 3D modeling software, and it's basically the same if you're doing UX as well. So you have a list of free applications that you can use online to prototype, let's say, a website or maybe an application. The same thing, I guess, with fashion, and the same thing with video. So you have storyboarding tools, storyboarding softwares, and a lot of similar tools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so these are just some of the 3D modeling software. A lot of these softwares will do more than just modeling as well, but this is a good place to sort of start. From this point, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jump into, you know, so again, I went online. I wanted to go, hey, you know what? I don't want to create a 3D model of a rover. I haven't got time for that. I just want to be able to grab some stuff that's off the internet just to be able to sort of composite it. So on here, you can go to places like Sketchfab, which host 3D models. And in here, there's free models. So as long as you've got an account, you can actually download these free 3D models to be able to start building out a 3D environment, which is super cool. You can see here, you've even got like the terrain that you could build out. You've got models of rovers, some more basic than others, and it depends on what style you're going for. For me, I downloaded, I think it was this one here. Other places you can go to, there's like CG Trader. There is Adobe Community have a website, and this is just free material in here as well. So there's models, and there's furniture. If you wanted to do something that was product design related, then you could come in here and be able to download these models for free just to be able to start building out environments. There's all sorts of stuff in here. So have a look, see what there is, characters, creatures, toys, etc. So do your research again online before you start building this out. Free 3D assets, or what if it's graphics, or if it's templates, go and try and find stuff that's readily available for free. So I downloaded this Mars rover, and I'm going to show you what that looked like, and it was pretty cool. So I've imported that Mars rover into Substance 3D Painter. You can see there, I'm rotating around my model there. It's got some really cool detail on there. If I wanted to, I could actually go in and start adding further details onto this, and I could paint, more stuff, or paint more dirt, or put graphics or graffiti or whatever I wanted to onto this 3D model. Maybe I'll add something like, if I come up here, Substance 3D Painter is, like I said, is Photoshop for 3D. You can see it's got this layer stack. All I'm doing is really adding these materials onto the different parts of the model. So you can see here, I'm going to drag and drop that onto my 3D model, and I've just changed everything to gold. Now, once I've got that, maybe I just want to change the roughness. So I'm going to make it sort of not quite as shiny as that. And I can just change, scratch intensity and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of parameters that I can change on my model. For this example, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. I really like the way that this has been textured. But I could, like I said, go in and add additional details. So from here, I'm just going to click on this button here, which is going to be Send to Substance 3D Stager. Now, this is going to take this model, it's going to package it up, and it's going to drop it into another application here. And this is really for staging and rendering and lighting. So I've dropped it into my scene here, and you can see that it's landed in my scene, and I can rotate my lights around there. I love that it's got these little solar panels on top. I'm really grooving on this. And again, I keep referencing back to my mood board, and I'm like, okay, cool. What was that? When I look at this, I want to have some sort of vehicle that is really looking out into the distance, into the space. And it's almost like this machine is thinking about, oh my goodness, am I going to have to travel these vast distances just to find out some research? So I love that sort of concept. So I want to try and build something like that using the spacecraft that I have. So I'm going to jump back into here. I'm just going to close this one down because I don't need that anymore. I'm going to discard that, and I'm going to jump back into Stager. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm going to try and reproduce something that looks like a Mars landscape. Again, I don't want to get into the world of modeling this stuff myself. So Stager has a bunch of 3D models that come with it. And, there's no Mars landscape there. And this is, when I was working in the industry, a lot of the times I would just use, sometimes you'll be creating textures or models, and actually, what's been used in the film, people wouldn't believe what was used. So for a Mars landscape, for example, I'm going to come down here, and I'm just going to use this T-shirt, which has been crumpled up, right? But it's at a scale that looks kind of like it's a bit of a hill, some terrain, and so forth, right? So I might just push that down there, and then I might just grab a plane and just scale that up. So we've got something that's just really just covering the base of that. And then I'm going to bring this T-shirt, and I'm just going to sort of bring that to the front because I want that to sit in front of the camera. And I'm going to bring that Mars rover, and I'm just, what I'm doing here is just really starting to position things. And this is my work camera. Now, if I wanted to create a locked off camera with a view that looks something like our concept work here and our reference images, then I can just create a new camera here. I'm going to go create new camera, and now I'm just going to line things up a little bit so that I'm looking, at a horizon line. I'm thinking about, you know, some hills and stuff in front of my rover here. I'm going to just position them here. Again, when I'm thinking about compositing an image, you know, with my elements, a lot of this stuff will come back to stuff that you've learned in art history, right? So if I come back to here, for example, I've got an image here that talks about the golden ratio, and it's this spiral. And essentially what these golden ratios are focused on is how your eye is led by an object and then basically follows a spiral shape around a picture, right? And it's just you know, there's been a lot of research done on this, that, you know, and this is why they call it the golden ratio. It's because if there is an object here, then your eye will be led across the image in a certain way.
Yes.
Depending on where that image is sitting, your eye will move in various ways, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah. And they use that quite a lot in architecture, photography, even fashion. Yeah. So it's
Everything.
really,
Yeah.
that's right.
So a lot of these concepts are taught, you know, in basic sort of art fundamentals. And, you know, what I will say, even with the 3D stuff, like I'm no good at programming. I'm not, you know, really technical in that sense. But, you know, I had a really good understanding of traditional art, where I was able to understand lighting and how light falls on materials and these concepts of compositing and stuff like that. So when you look at some of these industries, you know, you don't have to be technical and you don't have to be a code based. You can be really artistic and still get into, you know, industries like games or visual effects or architectural visualization or any of these types of industries. So, you know, people, unfortunately, you know, parents are, you know, unaware of a lot of the industries, and they think that you have to be coding to be able to get into these industries, which is just not true.
Mm.
So let me jump back into our scene here. And so I'm essentially, yeah, like I said, I'm just moving this rover around, positioning it where I want it to be. I'm just using the axes here to move things. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back into my work camera, and I'm just going to create another t-shirt. And I'm going to duplicate that, Control D. I'm going to push that forward, and I'm just going to make sure there's some variation in that, and I might just rotate that round a little bit. Jump back into my camera and see if we can get something that kind of looks like that. I don't want it colliding through the actual rover itself, but I want some landscape. So I've got something like that. I can just group these up. I can create a new folder so that if I ever need to move it, I can move the whole thing. So the next thing I want to do is start looking at, well, okay, what sort of terrain is this, you know, base going to be? So inside of Stager, if I click on this next little icon across here, I've got all these different materials here that I can just literally drag and drop onto that geometry. So, you know, for example, like I did on that the last one, I can drag a gold material straight onto our landscape there, and you can see it's got some texture in there, which isn't really looking like Mars. You know, we've got some other ones which I can experiment with. So again, there's always experimentation with a lot of this stuff as you're kind of working it out as well, especially when you're dealing with the tech side of things. So that looks more like a fabric than a terrain. So what I might do is just do a quick search, and I might do sand. And we've got a couple of materials in here that are sand, which I can drag and drop onto. Now, if I couldn't find the materials in here, I can definitely go back to the internet here and go back into that community website that we were looking at and start looking for materials here. And you can see there's a whole bunch. So maybe if I look at natural grounds, it comes up here with a whole lot of different types of terrain. There's beach sand and cracked. So some of these, you know, you've probably got even a Mars terrain in here actually somewhere, stylized one. So maybe I don't want to make it look realistic. I want to have really stylized sort of look to it. So I can use these materials as well. You know, you've got quicksand, which is kind of getting close to
Yes.
that sort of red terrain. So again, when I'm thinking about the experience that I've had in visual effects, a lot of the times, you know, you'll use things that aren't really what they're supposed to be for. So, using quicksand for the terrain of Mars, for example, if it looks like it works, then use it, right? So it's really about exploring, finding out what works, but not getting stuck up in, the details of where it should be. The cool thing with this asset library here as well, there's I think there's, if we look at natural elements, this is going to look at this one here. And no, which one was it? There's some really cool planet stuff actually that I wanted to look at. Materials. See, even in here, so maybe I've got a 3D model that hasn't got any materials on it. Inside of here, I can use some of these materials to actually drag and drop onto my 3D model and get this kind of space station switchboard look on top of my 3D model. So there's some really cool things that you can do really quickly without having to create it from the ground up, which is awesome.
It feels like you're doing a lot of experimentation and creative, playing around, I guess, at this stage. Is that something that's really common or something you need to do when you're working in industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you're experimenting all the time. And what I will say is that even when you've, think that you've finished and you've run out of time and, you leave it to the last minute, you're still sort of experimenting and fine tuning and trying to take it to that next level. You're always trying to go to 110%. I know that I've worked on characters and things in films that I felt like weren't finished. But at that point, it was approved, it was done, and then it has to go. So at some point, you need to manage your time, which is really important when things like awards, like the Bright Awards, for example, you should look at when things need to be submitted and then work out some sort of timeline of when, you need to complete these things. Otherwise, you can be doing the research stage or this fun stage here for a lot longer than you probably should be, and you'll run out of time at the end. So time management is really key to being successful in entering like contests and awards and things like that.
Yep.
So I strongly recommend making sure that you manage your time well.
Great.
So in here, again, I'm just moving my camera around a little bit. I'm just looking for that. I want to get some nice focus on there. I'm going to drag this sand material straight onto this t-shirt. No one even knows that it's a t-shirt now. And in
True.
fact, I can go in there and, if I wanted to do, I can get rid of the areas that are not being seen right now. So that's being seen. Maybe I can delete the neck part because I don't want that. Chest is good. Back is good. I don't see the chest, so I might delete that. And I'm just really optimizing here. I see the sleeve, which is fine, and that's cool as well. Again, what's in front of me, this is that t-shirt, and you can see the elements that t-shirt is made up of. Sleeve is there. I don't see that sleeve. I can delete it. Chest is there. Back is there. So maybe I can get rid of the chest. The neck I don't see. So I've just cleaned that up so that when it comes to creating that final render, it's not rendering all the stuff that it doesn't see. Again, in the films and movies, like when you see a shot of big buildings and streets and all the rest of it, if you were to move that camera slightly that way, there would be nothing there. You're only rendering what is in view of that camera.
Yes.
And even when the camera's moving, things are disappearing as that camera moves as well. So it's important to stay optimized. So I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to grab an eye tool here, and I can just click on this one here to put the same material on. Again, I'm going to click V, and I'm going to click on this one here, click I. Same as in Photoshop, I'm just sampling that material so that it populates on the other one. And you can see there it looks a little bit rough at the moment. So what I can do is actually come in here and I can increase the repetition or the tiling on it. So I'm just going to change it. Now we're starting to get some of that rock formation that I was hoping for. And I can also increase the resolution of the actual rock itself there as well. And you can see how now it's looking nice and sharp, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's looking good. I might just submerge that a little bit. Now I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm like, okay, sweet, but I don't want to have to go and do all this background, and there's a lot of stuff that I have to create in the background here. So one thing I can do is actually come across into images, and I can actually drag any of these images into the background here. So this one's just a couch, which I'm not going to obviously use. I can drag, something like a park, which, you don't see on Mars, so I'm not going to use that one. So I'm going to use one that I've saved in my libraries here, and I'm just going to reload that. And this is actually using an image that I grabbed as reference from Firefly, which I created. Again, I used Firefly to create this background image. So I'm
Nice.
just going to drag that into the background here, and you can see now we've kind of got this landscape, which is really, really nice. And I'm going to move my camera a little bit because I feel like the horizon line's a lot lower than what it currently is. So I'm just going to pull that down. You can see there, we're getting some of the landscape that's happening over there at the back, and that's what I
Nice.
want. I want to be able to see some of that. Again, I'm just going to position my rover so it's looking out. I've got some hills there, which is good. Pull that down a little bit further so that I've got some of that. Now, what I want to try and do is blend this foreground terrain in with the background terrain. So the way I do that is I'm just going to come back into this material, the sand material that we've assigned to the mesh here. And I'm going to come down to the color, and I'm going to see the colors we've got of our rock here. And what I can do is actually sample straight off that background image. And I'm just going to do that. And then it's going to change it to that sort of reddy color, which is kind of getting there. It's probably a
Yeah.
little bit more yellow than red. So I'll just touch that up a little bit. And it's starting to get there. It's just probably a little bit more red somewhere in there. So I can sample off that background image. And I love seeing that big planet in the background there. That's pretty cool. And just gonna bring that sample back up again because I think I like something in there. Yeah, cool. So I'm happy with that. Now, scale doesn't quite feel right. So at this point, I might just scale up my rover there a little bit. So he's just looking a little bit more, of a feature.
Yes.
So I've got that. I've got my rover. He's looking out, and it's looking pretty daunting. At this point, what I can do is I can come back across into my starter assets, and maybe I want to put in my own planet. So I can build that out. So I'm just going to drop back into my camera here, and you can see, it's funny, isn't it? You look at that now and you go, wow, and I don't even have to make that as big as what it currently is. So I can scale that down. Whoops, I've got that in groups. So I can just go back into that plane and scale that whole thing down a little bit. And move it forward so I'm not using up. So that's it. It's really, really simple.
Yeah.
So what I might do here is actually look at creating a bit of a planet. So I can see my camera there that I've created, and I might just grab a sphere here. I'm just going to pull that out, bring that down, and I'm just going to move it all the way at the back here. I'll look back in my camera, and we see our planet there, and it feels like it's way out there, and I might just push that back a little bit, which is super cool. So I'm going to grab some planets textures, which I found on the asset library there. So I've got materials, and you can see I've got crater, planet surface, giant planet surface, Mars surface. So I've grabbed some of these materials, and I'll just show you where I grabbed them from again. So these are these materials that I was talking about. So if I do planet, just do that. You can see here, we've got all these really cool planets that have
Nice.
already got these types of materials on, and you can see there's actually even a Mars surface. So I could have downloaded that and used that. So, there's these planets. So I've downloaded one of these, and I'm just going to show you what that looks
Nice.
like.
So
So I'll bring back up my Explorer here, and I'm going to bring this, and I'm just going to literally drag and drop that straight onto that piece of geometry there. You can
nice.
see now we've got our own planet in there. We've got this one there, and I might just position this one a little bit higher up there. and I want it to blend in so that, it doesn't feel like it's just been plopped in there like it has.
Yes.
So what I can do there is jump back onto this sphere, and I can go down, and you can see that even with this planet in the background, it's been cut off. You can almost see right through it. So that tells me that, I can play with the opacity, right? So if I bring that opacity all the way down of that planet, you'll see what happens here. Oops. And it goes to that, and I can just do a quick render of that. And
So
let's have a look. You can see there that it's now fading into the sky, which actually makes it feel like it's sitting in the image a little bit more.
nice.
Um,
So
that's cool.
it looks like you're doing prototyping and continuously refining your prototype as you move along. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly. So even now, I look at the foreground color and I'm not happy with the way that it's matching up. So again, I'll go back in, do some color sampling, try and get it to a point now that's feeling a little bit closer to where it should be, right? But we can also see from that. So yeah, again, yeah, like you said, Ivan, I'm constantly updating, refining at this point, right? And, even in the refinement stage, I'm asking people for advice, right?
Mhm.
I'm asking my teacher, I'm asking my parents, I'm asking people, anybody to go, hey, what do you think of this image? And even when you're experienced, you never stop asking people for feedback or advice about what their thoughts are. Because it might be just one thing and they go, hey, you know what? The color of the rover is not bright enough, or, the angle of the light and the sun isn't, the same as what it is in the actual image in the back. So you pick up little bits of information that you go, actually, I didn't notice that. Because what happens is, staring at images for a long time, you kind of go into this trance-like state. And even though you think everything is okay, you need to step away from it. And when you come back and you look at it, you go, wow, that color isn't even close to that background. So that's the refinement stage, right? So you're
Yes.
constantly refining, you're constantly tweaking things, and you might go back and forth. You might go, you know what, I loved that version 10 stages ago. So you'll go back to it, but you kind of go off and then you come back and you keep moving. It's very
Yes.
organic, the way that we design things.
Well, what I did notice, Alwyn, is that you directly worked on the composition and how the entire image will look. We have a lot of students, especially some of my students, they get caught up with specific details like making the planet really look good before working on the composition, or making a really good rover model before they work on lighting and composition like that. Uh,
Yeah,
is this by choice? Is there
yeah,
a specific reason why you want to concentrate on composition early on?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to give you an example. I was fortunate enough to work on Schmorg the dragon on Hobbit, the big dragon that was part of that whole trilogy series.
Mm,
And, we were painting poor details on its underneath its foot. And, there was so much detail that went into that character that, when the movie came out, you didn't see half of the details that we did there, right? So the point there is that you can spend hours and hours refining this rover and the tire tread and all the rest of it, and then you've got 3 days to submit it to the awards, and you run out of time, and then everything else looks rubbish because you haven't blocked it in. So whenever we're working, we talk about blocking in and just bombing we call it bombing the asset, which is really just getting colors on, base textures, not worrying about the tire tread, not worrying about dirt and dust at this point, just really just getting things done so that you've got coverage over everything. You've got a composite of what your final image is going to look like. And then when you get to this point, you go, oh, that's cool. I've still got 3 days or 4 days to be able to, before I submit this, I'm going to go through now and be able to add some of those bells and whistles, or some of that, that detail that you wouldn't have been able to do if you had just been stuck on the tire tread, for
yeah,
example.
that's right. So if you're doing something like a website and you're too concerned with, let's say, a button, or maybe you're doing a film and you just want this perfect shot that's just 2 seconds long, that's not really a good use of your time, is it?
No, not at all, not at all. So again, I can't stress enough about looking at the timeline and then sort of reverse engineering
Yes.
engineering it from that submission date so that you've given yourself plenty of time. Whoops. So I'm just going to lock off that camera because I do like how that's sitting out there, and I don't want to move the camera by accident. So I can lock that off. I've got my planet there. What I can do now is if I look at the background, I can see that it's quite blurred out, which is great because I can come actually back into that camera and add some depth of field there so we can start thinking about just blending it even better. So we've got this depth of field option here, and depth of field is similar to, if you're doing photography and you're trying to blur out the background and have that person in focus and nice and sharp, we're playing with the depth of field there. So I'm going to activate that, and you can see there it's immediately blurred out the rover and all the bits and pieces, so it's too strong. So I've got an option here to where do I want to set the focus. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go, I want the focus to be on the rover. So I click on that, and you can see now it's come back into focus. Our foreground's blurred and our background's blurred. It's still too strong for me. So I might just pull back on the blurring a little bit and kind of have that so that I've kind of got a nice blend of blurriness that it just sort of drops off into the background there. Or again, so, like even at this point, I'm like, yeah, it looks cool, but maybe I want to experiment and just have a quick look at what it looks like if I was to set the focus, say here, for example, or on the rock, and have the rover slightly blurred out, which gives it more of a mystical sort of look, like I'm not focused on the actual machine. It's more about the story, right?
That's right.
So you're looking at the terrain, and again, it's all about the storytelling. What sort of emotion am I trying to evoke here? And there could even be some little asset down here that I wanted to add, so maybe it's I could even add something from here, maybe it's a pair of glasses or something like that. So you can have some fun with what that is. Maybe so there's some astronaut left his sunglasses there, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you can have some
exactly.
fun. But I'll take that out. But yeah, so I'm experimenting. I'm gonna just play with that depth of field a little bit more. Click on that camera because maybe I just don't want it quite as strong as what it is there.
Great.
And bring that up. I might just bring the depth. Yeah, something like that. Cool.
So at this stage as well, Alwyn, I'll probably open our session for questions from
Cool.
anyone in the audience, perhaps. So if you have any questions, feel free to, I guess, let us know.
Yeah, excellent. Again, I'm looking at this and I'm pretty happy with it. If I wanted to create another camera angle, I can just create a new camera and be able to, move this camera around and have a different angle. Yeah, maybe again, if I'm thinking about that golden ratio and I've got my object here and then it comes up like that and it's following the moon, that's kind of working quite nicely. Or if I wanted to have something that was, just cutting that off or whatever it may be. I'm just playing around again, experimenting with the composition where it works best.
Yes.
And that golden ratio, you can flip it over so it's over this side and goes as spirals around that way. So once I'm in that point, I can then start, doing some final renders and be able to submit it. Now, I just wanted to take you quickly back to the Rookies website because there was a couple of fantastic examples of some students. This is students' work that submitted some entries into the Rookie Awards this year.
Yes.
And if we look at this example, it's for product design. It's for a mobile. It's for an old person's sort of walker, and you can see here, this is the name of their project. So they've identified the problem. It's people with ailments and, the older people that need help. And then, sort of the situation that can find themselves in. Maybe it was raining and so forth. So they've identified the problems. This goes back to some of the stuff that we talked about at the top of the presentation. And then, who the target audience is. Here's some concept ideas that they've come up with. They've grabbed some pieces, some stuff that's already been created, creating these mood boards and really starting to figure out what it could look like. and then gone into that 3D and started doing some prototyping with it, some colors, some looks, their mood boards, and then came up with the idea of, okay, cool, we could add a shopping trolley in here, we could have breaks and so forth, and still, aesthetically looking pretty amazing, showing the breaks, and then actually showing what it could look like. And you can see that it's a 3D model that's been composited into this final image.
Yep.
But that's a really good presentation. And this could be how you present your work to the Bright Awards, for example. It might not be just a final rendered image like I have inside a Stager. You could have a series of images that show your work in progress, those key milestones along that timeline, to be able to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a really good point because we have a lot of students that create good work, but they're not really showcasing it in a really good way. Do you think showcasing in your work in the professional field is important?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think even with the Bright Awards, for if it's a contest, so
Yes.
judges want to be able to see, your where you started and where you finished up, and some of those key milestones along the way. So to have things like a mood board, and you can see this one's for digital fashion, for example, and this is artwork that he's used and that has inspired him. For that, he's got traditional Francis Bacon as some of the inspiration for his garments, and he's going to transfer this into a digital fashion output.
Yes.
So coming up, and you can see all the work he's done, the research, he's pulled it all together. This is great. Taken just a photo of it, it's a screen grab, so you're able to submit that, and then comes up with some of these digital fashion pieces that was inspired by these initial art boards or mood boards, which is fantastic.
That's great.
And this is the artist here, and he's done some prototyping of what that could look like in a shop window. He's also got some little videos there. I'm not too sure if this is going to play, Ivan.
No, it
But
does. All good. Yep.
yeah, and you can see there, this is some AR that he's used to be able to do that. So I think being able to present key stages along the way is really, really important for the judges to be able to see the journey that you've been on. And I know, having judged awards myself, that I definitely give out additional points for those people that are able to show me that.
Exactly. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, if I look at the website that a student has done, the website is one thing, but I also want to see if you did the actual research for your audience, if you actually thought about, the users of your website and stuff like that. So those are things that I also like to have a look at, with regards to work.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I would probably go through and I'd just do a render of that actual camera. I'm happy with that particular one, and I'll just go through and do a render, and then I'd be able to show, maybe if I wanted to have some text over the top, then I can do some stuff like that. And again, if I wanted to do text that was related to this particular project, I can come back into Firefly again. And there's actually a really cool, if I go back into the beta, text to image, but there's also text effects. So I want to generate some text effects. So again, I'm going to go Mars. I'm just going to put in the same Mars rover red planet. I'm not being very creative here, and I'm going to enter the text, and I'm going to go Bright Awards entry 2023, and then I'm going to go generate, and we'll see what happens. So you can see here it's got the text that I entered, and now it's going through and using those that text prompt to be able to generate some unique font for me. And if I'm not happy with that particular font, then I can come through and be able to select different types of fonts as well. So really, even sort of very different styles. And maybe I'm, like, again, maybe I want to have it in a different language or whatever it is. So it's a really cool way to be able to bring some of the theme of your project through to the font itself. Again, really easy way to be able to generate some of that stuff. I
Yeah,
export that out and then I can put that on top of my image.
nice. That looks amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, hey?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, maybe I can use some of the sample prompts here, which are just wires. So, yeah, was there any questions, Ivan? Do we want to jump into some of the questions?
Currently, I think we've explained really well. We don't have any questions, so uh, we're really happy with it. So that's great.
Wicked. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think at this stage we can wrap it up, Alvin.
Excellent.
Great.
So let's have a go back and we'll have a look at our final image there. I'm just going to grab the image that it's select, save at the top and cancel. I'm just going to have a look at our final image and see what we created really quickly, right? So bring it up here and I'm just going to pull this up and that's our final image,
Nice. It looks really good.
awesome.
And you covered pretty much the entire design process. So you went through the process of immersion all the way to ideation, and then you refined your ideas, and then create the prototype really. And it's not really step by step, but it's actually everything all at the same time. You're doing it, which is really amazing.
Yeah,
Great.
cool. Excellent.
Yep. So thank you
I'll
everyone for
Yep.
joining us. There you go. And we look forward to seeing your submissions for Bright Awards. And if you have any other questions or you want more information, we did provide a website and some links with regards to information for Bright Awards. So we'd like to thank Alwyn Hunt from Adobe for joining us, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thank you.
And have fun. That's the most
Exactly.
important thing. Have fun. Be creative. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye bye.